Welcome to Xanadu Gallery's RedDot Podcast. I'm Jason Horsch, owner of Xanadu Gallery, publisher of RedDot blog, and your host for the podcast. This is episode 4, and we're recording on April 26th, 2017. It is a pleasure to be here with you again. And today I want to talk about some sales trends that we've seen in the gallery over the course of our last season. This is perhaps a bit premature to be talking about sales for the season. Our season isn't quite over yet, but I've been doing some analysis, and I feel like now is as good a time as any to talk about it. Our season really runs in Scottsdale from about mid-October through mid-May. And that corresponds, of course, with the time of the year that we're having nice weather. In essence, you can think of it this way. As soon as the temperature climbs over 105 degrees, people abandon Scottsdale, get out of town, head for the hills, go back home. And then as soon as it drops below 105, they come back. Well, that corresponds to those dates I mentioned. Mid-May is usually when we start to get really hot, although, of course, we can begin to warm up quite a bit. Before that, we've already hit pretty close to 100 degrees, and it only gets warmer from here on out. Now, this season is kind of the opposite of a lot of art markets, and I'm sure many of you who show in galleries or do art festivals, your strongest time of year is probably the exact opposite of those months. May through October, there are a lot of art festivals and shows and galleries doing a lot of work during the summer months, during the vacation months. So Scottsdale is a little bit inverse from that. And we share our season with a lot of the art markets, kind of in the South, Florida, Southern California, and other markets like that, maybe some in Texas. And so it creates kind of an interesting dynamic for us. And then we're very, very quiet during the summer months, although not as quiet as we used to be, because the area we're in, the greater metropolitan Phoenix area, has grown to be so large, and there's such a big year-round population here, and of course, air conditioning and all of that. We do still get business during the summer months, but it is dramatically decreased from what we see during our busy season. And just to kind of an indication of that, during our season, we can expect typically to be shipping out about 70, 75, 80% of what we sell out of state. So, it's just an indication of the total level of our business that is dependent on people traveling here. And of course, they're doing that when it's beautiful weather here. Anyway, kind of looking over this last season for us, and comparing it to our previous year, and kind of, looking over the various factors that I feel play into it, I think will be interesting to you. I think that there's some lessons to be learned, certainly for us, and hopefully I can pass some of that along to you, and that it's useful in your efforts to market your artwork, or if you have a gallery that you might be able to incorporate some of what we've learned over the last season into what you're doing. So first of all, let me just begin by saying that it has been a very good year for us so far. This season is much stronger than our previous season, the 2015 to 2016 season, which was an increase over the 2014 to 2015 season. So there are some trends within that I think are important to look at, and some factors that are playing into it, some within our control, some outside our control, and we'll kind of look at both of those things. So first of all, when I look at our sales year over year, and so if I'm just pulling January 1st, 2017 through the end of April 2017, and I compare that to that same period, January 1st, 2016 through the end of April 2016, my sales are up a little over 27% from last year. And that, of course, is a very significant level of increase. And as I say, some of that I believe is driven by external factors that I have no control over. But I also like to think that there are a few things that we did this season that helped us kick those sales hopefully into overdrive and led to that significant increase. Now, it'll be interesting to see kind of how that trend continues. Would I expect to see another, almost 30% increase from this season to next season? Probably not quite that strong. There were some significant factors at play this season that I would have a little bit of difficulty repeating, but I want to continue that trend and keep the sales going strong. And leverage the work that we've done over the course of our business to build a strong level of sales and good relationships with our collectors and so on. A couple of other interesting trends that I've noticed is that our total number of sales has also increased pretty dramatically, and that's even by more than 30%. In other words, not only has the revenue increased, but the total volume of sales has picked up. And interestingly, that's had to be the case because our average ticket price, the total amount that we're ringing up per customer purchase, has declined a bit. Which you could look at that as potentially a negative. Obviously we'd like to be selling ever more to each of our customers, but I feel that is indicative of the strength of the economy and people in general, our clientele in general, feeling more confident in making purchases, kind of a broader range of buyers getting out and buying. If you think back to the depths of the economic downturn that began in 2007, 2008, we saw especially what I would call our mid-market, that is buyers who are, obviously have enough to have some discretionary income and, be able to make art purchases, but not what I'll call the quote unquote 1% or the extremely wealthy. Those mid-market buyers were very deeply impacted by the events of the recession. Home values dropped, the stock market dropped, savings were tapped, jobs were lost, and it was a pretty broad-based pulling back across that section of the economy. And so for several years, most of our sales were occurring in the higher end of the market. And even for items that we were selling at lower price points, they were selling to buyers who were insulated from the downturn and had deeper reserves of savings, and just didn't feel the impact of the economic downturn quite as much. And so they were continuing to buy and continued to buy higher priced items as well. And so if you kind of drew a line graph of our average ticket, the average amount that we're ringing up, I think you would see a pretty dramatic increase in those years from 2007 clear through to 2012, even into 13. But the challenge was you saw a dramatic drop in total volume, and so those were just those sales kept us going. and were enough to continue to build the business, but the growth was very small, and you were dealing with you would have a large impact from a very small number of buyers, and that makes you very vulnerable to very small shifts in your sales efforts and marketing. Because if you're relying on a very small number of buyers and just a few of those buyers don't show up that year, don't come into town, or maybe they feel like they have bought enough art for their home in Scottsdale, or whatever the case may be, that can have a huge impact on your profitability for the year, and it creates pretty dramatic swings in year-over-year sales, where, like I say, just a few of those can really drive your sales up or down. And so it's been nice to see we still have those sales happening, the high-ticket price items, but we're also seeing a return of those mid-market buyers and just kind of a broadening of the market in general. And that's helped lead to a more consistent, less volatile market for us month over month. We see a much steadier cash flow from month to month because of that broadening of the base of buyers. And so that certainly I consider to be a good thing. It's also allowed us to experiment with some different price points in the gallery, and reach out to some artists who are producing artwork that I would consider to be, it's still handmade and handcrafted and art, but they are able to produce it at a higher volume and sell it at a lower price point, and reach thus a broader market. And so that has certainly played into our increase in total revenue for this year as well. Now, thinking about some of the kind of macro factors that have played into this year's sales, again, I would point to a couple of interesting things that have been at play. First of all, last fall, of course, was a very tumultuous time due to the election in the United States, and even more so than normal for obvious reasons. Now, I have no intention of getting political in this conversation, and it's not a direction that I want to go in. And if you've been following my blog, you know that I advise against bringing politics into any kind of or any part of the conversation when we're talking about art. Certainly when we're interacting with our clientele, but even when I'm talking to my artists or my staff, I just feel like we are better served if we try and, as much as possible, keep the gallery a politics-free zone. We're really focused on the artwork and the relationships, and we go there. But it is important to pay attention to what's going on in the outside world and how it's impacting your business. And for a gallery, and certainly for artists, you can't ignore those factors. And conventional wisdom would tell us, and I think it's pretty widely accepted, or at least I hear it a lot from artists and from galleries, is that you can expect that during an election year, you will see a decrease in sales. And there would be a whole host of reasons why that might be. And kind of so the theory goes that if people are caught up in and thinking about politics, they are not going to be thinking about artwork. There is a high level of uncertainty introduced into the financial markets, and even into people's attitudes about the future when they don't know what's going to happen due to something like an election. And like I say, certainly this election cycle, that was accentuated And there were a lot of ups and downs throughout the election season. And so one would have thought that this would be a kind of benchmark case for testing that theory. How do elections play into any market, but especially into the art market? And for us, it was kind of an interesting, an interesting moment, and I had to, as a business owner, try and plan as much as I could for the possibility that the election could negatively impact sales. We tried to play conservative in terms of cash flow and those kinds of things. But it was kind of interesting because at the same time, I didn't want to waste an entire year, and really anymore with elections. It almost seems like, when are we not in an election cycle? And, the election campaigning and the season seems to get longer and longer. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you already have people, kind of eyeing their prospects for the 2020 election. And so, if you wanted to, you could think of us as in a constant cycle of elections. And there is nothing I can do about that. There's nothing that any of us can do to, change the fact that there is that kind of level of constant back and forth and uncertainty that comes with the politics. And so that being the case, I hoped and wanted to be very proactive in all of our other efforts to market and sell, and again, not ignore the election, but just take it in stride and try to continue to build our business in spite of what was happening in the broader market. And I think that we can see that for us, at least, it paid off. Sales didn't drop off. And in fact, overall, 2016, we were up over 2015, including in November, when the election was settled and there were protests going on and just a lot of, like I say, turmoil in the United States and wondering about what was going to happen. Now, again, you could try and pick that apart and say, well, it kind of makes sense that our clientele, or at least a certain percentage of our clientele, might have been happy with the result because they might think that the outcome of the election would benefit them somehow, and on. And you could kind of analyze that to death, trying to figure out why that happened. But I tend to feel, and I think economists would tell us, that it doesn't really matter if you think something is going to be good for you or bad for you. It's more just the uncertainty that can be the challenge. And certainly there was a fair amount of that. And so, okay, that being the case, and seeing that our results increased during the election season and have gone on to continue increasing in the following season, what can I point to that we've done that I feel has had a positive impact for us in terms of the business that we're generating? And there are kind of three key areas that I'm looking at and would point to as having potentially played into our better business this year. And those three key areas are a gallery remodel that we completed during the summer of 2016, several new artists that we brought into the gallery, and the hiring of an additional salesperson for the gallery. And so I want to take a moment and just kind of pick apart and give you some of my thoughts on each of those areas and how it might have played into what we've seen this last season. So first, the remodel. The remodel was in some ways, perhaps a bit overdue. We've been in business for 15 years now. We celebrated our 15th anniversary this last fall. We've been in our current location for 10 years. And during those 10 years, had not done a lot in terms of updating our space. We tried to keep it fresh by constantly moving things around. And when I originally designed this space, we had a series of 8 movable walls created for us. These were kind of 6 feet wide, 4 feet deep, cubes, if you will. I guess not cubes, but just kind of movable walls. They were on casters, and I could move them around, put them together, pull them apart, and they created some just some flexibility in terms of our gallery space and how we displayed things. Well, over time, what ended up happening was that we found the optimal placement for these movable walls, certain spaces in the gallery where they gave us the best display, allowed the best movement through the gallery, and showed the artwork best. And when we kind of found those spaces, those movable walls tended to become pretty permanent in their spaces. And so, that being the case, for several years now, I had thought to myself, it'd be nice, because these movable walls have such a big footprint and take up so much floor space, and they have such a high volume of space that they're taking up, that they feel kind of heavy in the space. It just seemed like we ought to get rid of those movable walls and build permanent walls into those spaces. And so that was kind of one of the things that I was looking to do in our remodel. And then the other thing I was looking to do was to replace our lighting system. For years, really ever since I opened the business, we'd run on halogen lighting, and it served us well, and gave me some flexibility. The system that we had in place here was not terrible or anything that I totally had to get rid of. But over the course of the last few years, my lighting representative, salesperson, had been pushing me towards LED lighting. And it was something that I had initially resisted because of the cost of the conversion, the increased cost of the fixtures and bulbs, and because I felt like the light that LEDs create was a little too harsh and cold compared to my halogens. Well, there have been advances in the technology, and finally I was convinced that LED technology was in a good spot and could do a good job of showcasing our artwork. And so I was kind of ready to make that change as well. And so last August, we closed the gallery down for a couple of weeks and removed the movable walls, had a contractor come in and build us new display walls in the spaces where those movable walls had kind of settled, and we replaced the lighting. We refinished the floor and kind of just did a lot of sprucing up. And so in terms of what impact that has had on our season, first of all, it just really refreshed the feel of the gallery space, and I think helped bring it a little bit more upscale. It just made us feel a little bit more permanent, and again, as I say, moving those those movable walls out helped things feel a little more finished and fine. And so that was definitely a positive. And then we also increased the amount of light that we had. So it gave us a better ability to showcase the artwork. And beyond that, while at the same time freeing up floor space, we also increased the total linear feet of wall space, display space for two-dimensional art by a significant percentage. And I'm not remembering right now. I did the calculations measuring the linear feet, but it was something like a 30 to 40% increase in total usable space. And the space that is usable, all of it is more optimal than the space that we had previously. And so that allowed me to display more artwork and to display the artwork that I'm showing in a better way. And I feel like, that in and of itself has had a positive impact when potential buyers are coming into the gallery. There's more for them to see without being cluttered. It allowed us to kind of clean things up a bit. And I feel like really took us up a couple notches in terms of how our gallery's appearance reflects on us compared to our competitors in the other galleries in the area. So a big positive, and now obviously there was an investment involved in that. But I, by my calculations, will have recouped that investment by the end of this season, or somewhere midway into our next season, which is just a very quick turnaround for that kind of investment. I certainly wasn't expecting to see that quick of an increase in sales that I could relate to our increase in space. So that was a big one. Just remodeling and giving ourselves a fresh appearance. Then the second factor was bringing in some new artists. And obviously, this is something that we're constantly doing. You always want to give your collectors something new to see in the gallery, a new reason to come to the gallery, and just again freshen things up. Not only in terms of your gallery display space, but what you're actually displaying in the gallery as well. And so just experimenting and bringing some new artists in. And, this is something that I'll be talking about more in some upcoming podcasts as I talk about the artist selection process and how that kind of worked. But I can tell you that two of the artists that we brought on over the course of the last 12 to 16, 17 months, two of those artists immediately moved themselves into the top 5 of our best-selling artists. And so that has a significant impact. And they did that while at the same time not dramatically decreasing the total sales for our other artists. Now, this is all a little bit hard to quantify because while it's nice to kind of look at trends from month to month and season to season and year to year in terms of which artists are selling best in your gallery, it is very challenging to do that. And there is, unfortunately, because we are in such a boutique industry, and we're dealing with a relatively low volume of sales, compared to any other retails who may be selling, maybe moving hundreds and hundreds of units or thousands of units. They get a very good idea very quickly of what sales trends are for any particular item that they're selling. For us, again, just a few buyers coming in and responding to an artist's work one season can be enough to really take that artist's sales up significantly. Or if those few buyers don't show up one season, it may take that artist's sales trend down significantly, and you may have to wait over time to see it recover. And so, especially if I'm thinking about our overall strategy of which artists we're going to continue to represent, who we might need to rotate out of the gallery. I'm always trying to look over periods certainly longer than just a few months and even really longer than a year or two, because those trends can really cycle up and down. But at the same time, looking at these new artists that we brought in, there was an almost instant reaction to them, and a very steady level of sales created for those artists and their work. And so you can't ignore that. And I think it points to the importance of really working to keep things fresh. Now, you as an artist can accomplish something similar by freshening up your work, bringing in a new subject or introducing some new sizes to your work, just kind of trying to mix things up a little bit, and give your existing collectors something new to look at. And even when you've done something that's new and a little bit different, obviously still keeping within the constraints of having your work be consistent and identifiable and kind of fitting to your brand. But by just bringing in some new element that you can point to and talk about and that your collectors can see, could be very powerful for you in generating new sales, especially if you are, kind of in a show circuit, or you're been showing at a gallery for a long period of time. Just finding new ways to freshen that up could be really powerful. And then the third and final factor that I'd point to in our increase in sales was bringing on an additional salesperson. And some of you will have had the opportunity to meet Kristen, who started with us actually in 2016. But bringing her on has also given me, just more coverage on our floor. If you think about kind of giving the best possible service to as many clients as you can, and especially during high season when you might have multiple clients in the gallery at the same time, it's been very helpful to have an additional salesperson on the floor. And for gallery owners, this is a bit of a balancing act, because obviously bringing on sales staff is also going to have an impact on your overhead and your payroll. And so you can't bring on an infinite number of salespeople, and you can't necessarily hire as many salespeople as you'd like to all at once. And there is some optimal level where based on how much traffic you're getting, you have to look at the total number of salespeople that you might need. But it certainly has had a positive impact on our gallery's success over the season to have that additional professional salesperson on the floor, really helping our clientele and giving superior customer service. And so, as I think about our, what are our prospects for the future, I am very positive, and I always tend to be optimistic about what the possibilities are. And if I could pass on anything to you, it would be to try and keep your focus on what you can do and what efforts you can be making, what actions you can be implementing to increase your activity and your success as an artist, as a business person, a gallery owner, whatever role you find yourself in. It is easy, and I see this happen all the time, to look for external excuses and reasons why things aren't going the way that you would hope they would be. But it's also, I find, ineffective and actually counterproductive to be doing that. Certainly there's nothing that you and I, at least on a significant level, can do to impact the global economy. Certainly we've all seen the challenges and the difficulties that we can face when the economy is sputtering and going through extremely difficult times like the recession of the last few years. And I don't want to pretend for a moment that we can just be Pollyanna and ignore that and things are going to be great and easy. Certainly we all struggle during those difficulties. However, the choice that you can make is, how am I going to react to that? And I hope that our default has been to always take those negative externalities and come at them fighting and swinging. The economy's down, or there's an election going on, but while there's nothing I can do about that, there is something I can do about making sure that the artwork that I'm offering is the highest quality, most interesting, most engaging artwork that I can find, that I'm displaying it in the best possible way, and that I'm working with my clientele to provide them the best possible customer service and create experiences for them that they will enjoy, and that I'm looking to help them enrich their lives with the artwork that they're seeing in my gallery. And if I'm doing that, yes, my business may decline with the greater economy, and goodness, there can be even instances where we miscalculate, or where the economy is just so bad that it literally, you can't even survive it. But choosing between, going down swinging or just letting it happen, I would always take the former. I want to work as hard as I can at all times to make sure that I'm taking advantage of every opportunity that's out there, even if we really have to struggle for them. And, I think what that means, and as I look at our business, what I see is that it was kind of a scenario of, if it didn't kill you, it made you stronger. And, I feel very fortunate. And, even I'll use the word blessed that, we had some things happen and some clients work with us, and many other things that helped us get through the difficult times. And as the economy continues to improve, I feel like we've put ourselves in a position to create some very positive outcomes and to take advantage of opportunities that come our way. And so I would encourage you, again, as an artist or a gallery owner, to look at what you're doing and find what's working well for you and do more of it. Look at any tendencies that you might have to feel down or negative, or to convey, quote, excuses, unquote, that are keeping you from being successful. And, I do understand the temptation, if things aren't going well, if we can find something external to blame it on, that takes some of the pressure off of us. It's very natural to look for those kind of things, but it's also just not helpful to do that. And so we're always be looking for what we can actively and proactively be doing to improve our situation. And from what I've seen and my experience in the business, as we do that, as we work harder and smarter and look for ways to engage more and get more exposure and increase marketing and, all those kinds of things that are involved in business. Over time, you start to build a kind of capital of goodwill and positive energy and good karma and all those kinds of things that ultimately push you towards greater success. So that's kind of the message for today, is to push forward and ignore the negative and embrace the positive. And again, like I say, I'm not trying to say that in some kind of Pollyanna way, but just in a way that we can use for increasing our success in the art business. And of course, as I've mentioned many times, success means many different things to each one of us. And, it's helpful for me as I do my analysis of our market to look at concrete things like revenue and profit margin and all those kinds of things and analyze it in that way. But there are many other ways that we also measure success, including the positive impact that the artwork that we're sharing with our collectors is having on their lives, the lives of their families, And I think also just in the broader society in general, if there's ever been a time that artwork is significant and necessary and helpful, it sure seems like now is that time. And so, we can hopefully, as the trendy saying is going right now, we can hopefully do well by doing good, and just pushing forward, ever looking towards that. And that's my note for today and our analysis for today. I appreciate you joining me for this podcast. I'd be curious to know and would invite you to leave a comment on our podcast page, on the recording page on RedDot blog, about what you've seen over this last year or the last season for you. Have your sales increased? How did you respond to the election last year? What impact do you feel it had on your sales? And what are you doing to push your business forward as an artist? Share those comments below the recording on our podcast page, and I'll look forward to seeing those notes. Thank you for joining me for the podcast today. I'll look forward to hearing from you and to seeing you in the next session.